based on what I've heard from other copywriters, the homepage is like the worst thing. They don't want to write homepages, but the hybrid one reader actually makes homepages a lot easier to tackle because you have an actual intentional plan that you can use and you're not guessing at the structure of the page or the messaging on the page, etc. It really solves that particular problem that copywriters often run into.
Welcome to nohacks.show, a weekly podcast in which smart people talk to you about better online experiences. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Carolyn Beaudoin, co-founder of Boxcar Agency. Carolyn is here to talk about hybrid one-reader messaging strategy, which helps businesses connect with diverse audience segments without extensive segmentation. She'll share how this approach has driven significant results for her clients at Boxcar Agency. Carolyn, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Sunny.
Pleasure to talk to you. So, the first question, why Boxcar?
Oh, good question. So Boxcar, when we think about marketing ecosystems, we sort of think about this sort of, it's a world, it's an ecosystem, right? And it's all these interconnected pieces that work together. And so we internally often talk about the pieces as individual boxcars. They're all connected. The train needs to kind of go in the same direction in order to deliver results, but they need to also be interconnected. Also, additionally, we started out as an email marketing agency. We were focused solely on email. And when you map out email automations, it really does look like a little bit of a train, right? You have all these little maps in your pieces in your flow chart. Yeah.
Or a train wreck.
Or a train wreck.
Depending on how you do it.
It depends on how you're mapping, I suppose.
Another question before we get to hybrid one reader, which is something that is Boxcar property. It's something that you have created for your agency, right? Mm-hmm. The second question is, what are some of the non-obvious tips for someone who wants to become a better copywriter?
Read books that are not about copywriting. So I'll dig in a little bit further. So sort of when you want to become a better copywriter, you start with the books, right? You start with maybe, or a course, right? But there are some classics that you might look at reading. But in my personal experience, where I've sort of grown leaps and bounds in my own copywriting journey is when I picked up books and resources that were not copywriting specific. So books about logic, creating logical arguments, books about UX, books about usability, books about sales, the sales process, like the Jolt effect, for example. That's all about how to move folks out of an indecision. I mean, that's critically important as a copywriter to understand, yet you're not necessarily going to find the research and the findings that are in Jolt Effect in a copywriting book. So that would be one of my main tips.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about hybrid one reader now. Sure. What is it? Let's start there.
So to talk about the hybrid one reader, we need to sort of talk about the rule of one. For those any copywriters in the space, and I think marketers as well, right? This rule of one, this idea that copy that's written, assets that are written, need to sort of fall into this sort of planning and copywriting process, right? We have one reader that we're writing for. We have one offer that we're selling, right? Whether we're selling a click or we're selling an actual product and asking for money to change hands, it's neither here nor there. An offer that we're selling, one value prop, and or one big idea, depending on who you're learning the rule of one from, and then one call to action. And so that rule of one really helps to keep messaging and copy focused. It makes the copy clear. And then from the reader's perspective, it makes it easy for them to self-qualify, to understand, and to act on the copy. Yeah, so that's the rule of one. But the hybrid one reader is this sort of stand-in, so to speak, for that one reader. There are instances where you may not be able to write to just one reader segment, right? You might have to write to multiple readers.
And what are some of the instances when that is the case?
Yeah, so homepage, really common, the most common example I would say, right? You have a homepage, it's sort of a very high traffic page on your website. You have all different types of readers landing on that page. You might have multiple segments landing there. They might be in different stages of awareness. And based on what I've heard from other copywriters, the homepage is like the worst thing. They don't want to write homepages, but the hybrid one reader actually makes homepages a lot easier to sort of tackle because you have an actual intentional plan that you can use, and you're not guessing at the structure of the page or the messaging on the page, etc. It really sort of solves that particular problem that copywriters often run into, and marketers, frankly, as well, run into when they're working on homepages.
Right. So how does it work? How does this hybrid one reader methodology work?
So the methodology, again, going back to this like stand-in, right, idea, you can imagine your segments occupying different circles in a Venn diagram. The hybrid one reader is the shared space in the middle of that Venn diagram. And when I'm talking about segments, I'm also talking about jobs to be done defined segments rather than demographics-based segments. Demographics have their own place in the puzzle. It's particularly important if you're running ads and figuring out targeting for that. But from a messaging perspective, demographics don't tell us why somebody buys. Jobs to be done does help us understand why somebody buys, though. So when I'm talking about segments, I'm really talking about jobs to be done defined segments.
Right. So basically, you're going for a segment that is a cross-section of many different segments. And like, if I do this, it's going to hit. Like, it's going to target as many people as possible without alienating others. Like,
exactly.
That's the core idea. Okay. So the inspiration behind development of this strategy was what? Working with smaller websites, smaller audiences, or something else?
Smaller businesses, but also big businesses. So frankly, the development of this strategy came out of a need based on the asks that we regularly hear from our clients. Typically, it's a regular combination of asks, and those asks are, help us know our customers. Great, we can do that. Jobs to be done is a really great tool for helping you know your customers. And then the second ask is create conversion-oriented marketing ecosystems. We can do that. We're well positioned to do that. Conversion copywriters they take a sort of unique look, and they bring a sort of more diverse skill set than perhaps a brand copywriter. We bring CRO skills and UX skills, all of these different pieces of the puzzle. So we're well positioned to do that. The final ask, which can make the whole solving and helping the client a little bit challenging, is do not create excess marketing bloat. And so the challenge with that ask in combination with the other two asks, help us know our customer and create conversion-oriented marketing ecosystems, is that often one of the ways that we can create a conversion-oriented marketing ecosystem is to increase the relevance of the message, right? It's a common way to increase conversions, and we often jump straight to segmentation. And when I say we, I mean marketers, generally speaking, might go, okay, we'll increase relevance by segmenting our message. Segmentation is problematic for bloat. And so it's really this balancing act that we need to do, right? Where we have these asks for customer-oriented marketing and messaging and conversion-oriented marketing ecosystems, but don't increase the bloat. So this really came out of a need to answer all of those asks.
In many ways, this is like minimalism for copywriters, right?
Yes.
Like, buy one thing and use it for 5 different purposes. Like, this is exactly what that is. So for anyone who's into minimalism, like, this is the way. This sounds like it's the way. I love that. I really like that. Let's talk about some actual scenarios and applications. You sent me a few before we started recording. I want to talk about, you mentioned homepage. And yeah, homepage is where good copywriting usually goes to die because there's so many. Well, it is because, I mean, just get to the slider and just do a few swipes and
No, not the slider, the slider.
we can talk about the slider today as well, but I think even below the slider, it's really it's like I don't know, like a dump for everything we needed to put on the website, but we didn't know where.
Yes.
And then you have sections that have nothing to do with one another, and you have different tone of message, and you have different people writing them, and different length. If it's copy-paste, it's going to be even different font if you mess up your CMS. It's just, I mean, it's where copywriting goes to die. I'll live by that. I'll die on that hill. So how do you apply this to a homepage? And it could be B2B, B2C, D2C, whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, homepage, I agree. It is often where good copywriting goes to die. The way that we apply this, I mean, so sort of like, let's unpack common challenges. We touched on them a little bit, right? Mixed traffic, different stages of awareness, different segments that we have to solve for. Also, additionally, if you're a business that doesn't have website personalization tech in your tech stack, you can't personalize that hero messaging, for example. And I will say that many businesses that we work with do not have that type
Most
of tech.
businesses do not, exactly.
No,
Yeah.
no. And, sometimes we hear from our smaller business clients, oh, I'm sure you're used to working with businesses with, larger tech stacks, and that because we do also work with large sort of enterprise level clients, and we say, nope, they actually also don't have that tech in their tech stack. You don't need to, there's no shame there not having that tech. So anyways, going back to the hybrid one reader though, in this instance, we are solving for both of those sort of constraints that come up with this particular asset. Critically important. We can't just sort of get rid of the homepage, though I think some marketers and copywriters would probably very happily get rid of it. The hybrid one reader really addresses this challenge by allowing you to sort of have a framework for proactively and intentionally solving for that mixed traffic. You are writing, as you mentioned, to the cross section between your segments. And so if we were to sort of apply this to let's say an example, we'll take a SaaS product, a project management software tool. Let's say we're writing our homepage hero, right? And through the process of documenting our jobs to be done, mapping for the tool, we notice that there are two key segments for this particular product. Both of those segments, they share an emotional desired outcome, let's say, and it's that they both are hoping that they feel confidence that the right tasks are being worked on at the right time. So they're really hoping for that as an outcome. They have different contexts and different criteria and constraints, etc., but they have this shared emotional desired outcome. And so we can take that idea and put that into the heart of the headline, right? Right tasks, right time, sort of angle. That's the what we might say, not how we would say it. That core message will speak across segments because you've seen it in your map. Of course, you would also want to mix in differentiated value, like how does this particular software do that, deliver on that in a better and unique way compared to the other products in the market. You'd also want to make sure that the message is differentiated. You're saying it in a unique way compared to the competitors in the space, but that's the heart of the message, right? And so you have that from your hybrid one reader. Additionally, when we're thinking about structure of the page, right, because it sort of becomes this dumping place where you just sort of throw things on the page and you go, I hope this works. It doesn't need to be like that. It doesn't need to be like that. When we have the hybrid one reader documented, we can see, okay, well, actually, both of these readers share common objections. Maybe it's something about support. Maybe it's something about the way that the product is made or the types of use cases that they might be able to incorporate. And so you can start to plan a page that actually addresses those common places and helps to send those readers to where they need to go elsewhere on the page, right? You might be funneling them into a specific solution page. And so that's almost like this hybrid one reader homepage becomes this gateway, so to speak, for more segment specific secondary pages that they might need to visit in their buying journey.
So instead of the most common way of writing a homepage, you start with 3 different things you want to say and have them fight, and whoever is the loudest at a meeting gets the hero section. You start with one common thing and then you expand into the other directions. Like, why doesn't everyone do it like this? That's my only question, because it's the only thing that makes sense. Since we're talking about homepages, let me ask this, and you cannot say it depends. Which one is more important, writing for homepage or writing for internal, let's say, product pages? There has to be, like, usually it's this or usually it's that. Let's say it's an e-commerce website to make your life easier.
Yeah, I would say that the pages that are closer to the paid conversion,
Right.
If we're going to prioritize, everyone likes
That's what we're doing. That's
exactly
what we're doing.
Right. If we're going to prioritize where the paid conversions are happening, and or where big leaks are happening
Right.
in the ecosystem. But I will say, based on what I've seen, the homepage is just, it's a favorite because it's...
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
That's
exactly,
why
right?
I'm
Like
asking,
everyone will keep working on homepages until the,
Yep.
it'll never stop. And that's fine. Websites are an ongoing process,
While
right?
ignoring everything else. That's
you
what the problem is, right?
Exactly. So we don't want to ignore where the paid conversions are happening and where big leaks are happening to fine tune a homepage. No,
I was
please don't
hoping
do
you'd
that.
say that. I was really no, but seriously, I've seen this so many times, especially e-commerce websites, because in e-commerce, when it's not just a direct-to-consumer brand, when they're selling a lot of different things, homepage is a mess. Like it's, as I said, where copywriting and a lot of other things go to die, but that is at the expense of not optimizing product pages, category pages, landing pages, everything else, because everyone thinks that people are going to type in my domain and everyone's going to go to my homepage. No, just no, stop that. I like that a lot. Let's talk about another one. Another example you sent me: seasonal campaigns for direct-to-consumer and B2C brands. How do you work with those? Because this is even more interesting, right?
So what we noticed in this space, seasonal campaigns, this is like bread and butter of this type of business. It's really key to driving sales in many businesses. And so, of course, the goal there is to sell product to as many right fit buyers as possible. You're also capitalizing on what we consider sort of high urgency moments sort of built into the calendar year. Black Friday, Cyber Monday is a really great example of this. But there are challenges in this scenario. And so again, mixed list, right? You're often dealing with your mixed list, whether that's website traffic coming from ads or organic or from your actual subscriber list. The additional challenge often that we see in D2C and B2C companies is that they also are running with limited resources. We're all living in a world where we have limited resources, I think. But particularly in some of the D2C companies that we've worked with, they have really lean teams. And so we can't bog that lean team in implementing this really heavy, like implementation heavy asset. If we're segmenting a bunch of different ways, they might not even have the right data in the system to do that. You're also dealing with time constraints in terms of like actually when the campaign is running. And this is an instance where you really have to ask the question of, does the lift to implement this make sense given the potential ROI that we will get back from that extra time spent? In our experience, the answer is often no. You're better to just roll out a really solid, universal set of assets. It's easier for the team to implement. If especially, thinking about some of the clients that we've worked with, they might be running seasonal campaigns nearly every month. If you bog them down in these really heavy and really intense campaigns, they're not going to be doing anything else, and they have so many other things to do.
Exactly. Yes, that's one reason. Another one. Don't laugh at me. Another reason is that it's easier to learn from something that's simple, especially if you're a small team and just getting started. If you have like 50 different campaigns for Father's Day, Black Friday, whatever it is, you're not gonna have time to look back and learn from them. If it's just a one unified, I like how simple this model is. Like hybrid one, it's like you're trying to lose weight, caloric deficit. Start with that, do that. Don't care about the micros, macros, all that stuff, keto, whatever. Just start with the most basic things that works for everyone that you have to do to get this thing done. Like, this is simplicity. Like, I love simplicity. This is right up my alley. So what are some of the most common challenges you've seen when implementing Hybrid One?
Challenges when implementing Hybrid One. So, there is part of minimalism and simplicity here, right? We've talked a little bit about this, is also choosing what not to say. And that can be really challenging for some.
Why? Because of the client wanting to say it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Right. Because
how do you convince them? Well, what's your strategy?
Well, we lean on the results that we've yielded with previous clients. That's a big piece of convincing them. It's also leaning back on the research that we've typically conducted for them and saying, okay, but remember, this is based on your research, and the research insights that we agreed were aligned are X, Y, and Z. And so we're, again, like harkening back to those research pieces that were done earlier in the project. Also, frankly, helping them just understand how a change that they might want to make, because they're trying to, but we need to appeal to this, what about this? What about this? And it's, it's like, okay, yes, there's a time and place for that. It's not here. It's not in this moment.
It's not the homepage.
Yeah, it's not here. It's not this moment. And then you help them to see the bigger picture, so to speak. The thing with the hybrid one reader, in the way that we map it, is that it's actually a solution agnostic tool that a team can use. They can just keep, we're writing a marketing asset, we're planning a marketing asset, we go and look at the hybrid one reader if that is applicable to the project that we're working on, which it often is. So that's
a good response. But quite often, like when you're talking to a client, they want to achieve A. They want to do A because they think they want to achieve B. But there's a way C that's much, much better, much, much faster to get to the point they want to be at. They just don't know of it. So, educating the client, I guess, is another really, really important step. And I mean, you're the expert at copywriting. Of course, you're going to educate them. Yeah. Let's talk about it as a framework. What are the steps to implement this for your client? Like, let's just go through, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 7 steps.
Yeah. So the process can sort of be broken down into two phases with 2 steps each. So 4 steps total. And you can sort of skip phase 1 if you've already put jobs to be done mapping in place. So you're already ahead of the game if you're in that particular position. But we'll start there just in case you're not.
If you know what you're doing, basically.
Exactly. So, but phase 1, you're going to create your core jobs to be done maps. Step 1 of this process is conducting, gathering, and analyzing your research. Often this is a mix, right? You're going to be conducting interviews. Typically, you might have surveys, chat transcripts, sales recordings, reviews, etc., like a whole bunch of different pieces of the puzzle. And ideally, you're getting as complete a picture of the entire buying journey as possible. That's where really those interviews are critical. You'd have 2 to 3 data sets, though, sort of minimum, right? I've named a bunch of different research tools and methods you might use, but 2 to 3 data sets is a strong start. Then you triangulate against them. You'll document your jobs to be done maps. In our experience, what we've seen is that typically 2 to 3 core jobs emerge, and you'll do a map for each job to be done with primary job statement and sort of the journey that type of buyer goes through in order to choose your product. So at the end of that process, you should have a map for each of your jobs to be done. You're in good shape now to go ahead and start creating your hybrid one reader, which is phase 2 of this whole process. Right. So this is the point where you're now mapping. You're going to look at the overlap, and you really you take your maps and you compare and contrast. I like to go through with a highlighter, right, and just look at, okay, here are some similarities. Highlight. You're finding the shared attributes. That's really my way's highlighter. You don't need to do that though. Whatever way works for you. Finally, you'll take what you've noted as the shared attributes and you'll document that into a new clean map. We have a template for that if you're interested in grabbing that, but
the link will be in the description, by the way. Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. So you create this additional, I should say, map. You'll keep your initial maps intact because you may need them. If you embark on segmentation, then those maps come in handy. So you want to keep those, but you also have this hybrid one reader map. And so if we're saying, okay, there were 2 core jobs to be done, now at the end of the process of having this hybrid one reader documented, you'll have 3 maps in total, 1 for hybrid one reader, 1 for each of the other core jobs to be done. Importantly, that map stretches across the entire buying journey. Just like I mentioned when we were talking about research, these maps are solution agnostic. So it's not It's not created just to write a homepage. For example, we're really looking at that entire buyer journey. And you can refer back to it really every time you work on a new asset, which is kind of key. Yeah.
I love how simple it is. I said that 10 times already. So what are some other tools and resources beyond what you mentioned that can help people get better? Well, start with Hybrid One Reader, but also get better at copywriting. You mentioned some of the books earlier, but what are some of the like courses, resources, whatever for copywriters?
So resources for copywriters, but also jobs to be done, because this is a pretty key part of this whole process. Pick up Demand Side Sales 101 by Bob Moesta. It's a great, highly tactical book, very accessible, and from my opinion, it's easy to apply once you're sort of in it and thinking about it because of the way that book is written. So highly recommend that as a resource. There are lots of courses and training out on the market specifically for copywriting. I would say, look for a program that aligns with the type of assets that you're trying to write. Yes, there are like fundamental rules that apply across the board, but there are also
you need to know
assets.
what you're trying to do exactly. What type of asset you're creating, which is great advice. So, final question: what is the best way for the audience to connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm pretty regularly active every week or so, sharing insights about copywriting, messaging strategy, etc. Also over at our website, boxcar.agency, and the template specifically that we mentioned is at boxcar.agency/hybrid one reader. Yeah.
Beautiful. This was Copywriting for Minimalists 101, and I really enjoyed this wonderful interview. Carolyn, thank you so much for being a guest of this podcast. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and to everyone listening to the episode, please consider rating, sharing, reviewing, and I'll talk to you next week.